Welcome back, Fanfueled family. Today we're doing one of my favorite things on the channel, a viewer request. A few weeks back, frequent commenter and dare I say, friend of the channel, Jeremy Viviana Griffin 9458 asked if I could cover two topics. Today we're going to look at the first. So, the Sorcerers of Rhand. Who are they? What do they stand for? And how did they get such a cool name? Now, fair warning, there aren't too many pictures of these guys, so I'm a bit limited. So, the Sorcerers of Rhand were, honestly, kind of psychotic. They were a group of beings that believed in a power greater than the Force that they called the Dark. Why do I say they're psychotic? That doesn't seem fair, does it? Well, just listen to their core tenets. Only power is real, and the only real power is the power to destroy. Existence is fleeting. Destruction is eternal. Very brutal. I hesitate to even call it nihilism because that means that you believe that nothing has any real meaning. This is more apocalyptic fatalism. That death and destruction is the only thing that matters. Not even hate, just destruction, dispassionate ending of life. Man, I got chills even writing that. That's some pretty dark stuff. The thing they followed, called the Way of the Dark or just the Dark, professed that not only was the light side of the Force irrelevant, but that the entire Force was nothing compared to the Way of the Dark. The Sorcerers of Rhand believed that entropy and destruction was the way of the universe, that all things were consciously or unconsciously working towards this cosmic end. In this absence of life, this void was the foundation of truth, which the Sorcerers called the One Truth. Thus, they hated the Force, because it was created by life, and it was just fleeting as the universe approached the ultimate entropy, heat death. Heat death is the theory that eventually, in any given system, such as a universe, temperature and energy will be so evenly spread that there is no energy and nothing can happen. It's a theoretical state under the second law of thermodynamics. It would be the closest thing to death that a universe could experience, just nothingness. They believed that the Dark would actually reward those who moved towards devastation and destruction. If destruction was the primary goal, the Dark would reward them by allowing secondary goals to succeed. The most famous of the Sorcerers of Rhand, for example, Cronal, believed that Palpatine was able to achieve success against the Republic and the Jedi because, fundamentally, his goal was their destruction. When that was achieved and he was more focused on building and running the Empire, the Dark saw that as shifting goals from destruction to creation, and that meant that while once Palpatine could not fail, now he could never succeed. This is utterly insane, of course, but zealots don't use logic. The power Darksight is regarded as the most powerful of all of the Way of the Dark powers, and it's, well, I'm not gonna lie, it's kinda bonkers, and I would not want anyone with their mentality having it. Anyone here familiar with Bleach? You know Yuha power, the Almighty? It lets him see every possible future and choose which future happens. Yeah, it's that, but in Star Wars. So what we have here is effectively a superpowered cult that worships the idea of all things being destroyed and falling into entropy, and some of them can directly guide the future. Are we sure this isn't a Halloween episode? Well, yeah, but this feels like our usual Halloween fare, right? The Star Weirds, the Nal Nal. Yeah, I guess you're right, Editor Me. Alright, moving on. Speaking of Halloween, the Sorcerers also existed in variable states of decay. Yeah, good point. Okay, these descriptions are a bit graphic in content, but nothing quite veering into R-rated territory. Still, if you have a weak stomach, maybe save this video for a few hours after you eat rather than while you're eating.
Hold on to your dookie, it's about to get spooky.
A woman named Suke, who was a historian, encountered them in their temple, the central ruin of Rhand. One lacked any skin and oozed bodily fluids with every step. One was a blackened, rotted skeleton. One had been turned inside out with teeth poking through strange places, and a fourth was little more than a long ribbon of flesh. She also noted that some scuttled around on multiple legs, mysteriously hovered over the ground, or flew with large wings. The Sorcerers themselves were formed when three cults basically fused into one super death cult. The Khans are exiles who worshipped mental enslavement, the Warriors of Shadow who were an all-female cult that was driven off their homeworld and fled to seek insight, and the Nell of Muspelli who tried to bring forth ancient and apocalyptic gods in 100,000 BBY. Yeah, more or less. Anyway, these three cults fused into one on Rhand in the ruins of a dead civilization's cities. How appropriate. It's sort of unclear if the Way of the Dark is actually the Force or not. It could just be a different understanding of the Force, like how Night Sisters think they're using magic, but it's just the dark side.
From a certain point of view.
This is Legends though, so who knows? And that brings me to another important point. This is Legends, and it has fundamental flaws as a topic that would make it problematic if transplanted wholesale into canon. Sure, I think they're fascinating and could make really interesting antagonists for someone like Sabine and Ahsoka, or even Luke, but they'd have to be adapted. I mean, they're a cult that has no goal other than death and destruction. That's quintessential irredeemable villain that doesn't want to be forgiven.
I have thought of this moment more than you know. And I wondered if here, at this ending between us, if you would care enough to try to save me. If a Jedi could find it within themselves to spare one who has fallen so far. I wanted you to say those words. For that I am grateful. But I do not want your mercy. I want you to break.
They're psychotic, death-worshipping wackadoos. It would make a nice change of pace from it always being the Sith, or whatever Snoke was originally supposed to be. I think I do like these guys from the standpoint of just how abhorrent they are. They are so antithetical to my own beliefs of positivity, building people up, not tearing them down, that I can't even fully wrap my head around their logic. Okay, even if you believe that destruction is the natural state of the universe, you have to see that once heat death occurs, gravity takes hold, pulls the universe back into a singularity, and then it explodes outwards again in another Big Bang. So you accelerating destruction brings creation faster. But hey, zealots don't use logic, they just keep banging their heads against their own wall.
Those guys don't know when to quit.
Foster, zealots don't quit. They just come back twice as mean and 4 times as crazy.
That's what makes them, zealots. I'd just like to shout out Jeremy Viviana Griffin 9458 for requesting this topic. It's another good one, though it definitely would have been better as a Halloween video. If you leave a comment, I'll pin it. Thank you so much for watching. I had a bit of a struggle to put this one together. My thoughts might not be quite as coherent as usual, and I apologize for that. I just had trouble focusing this week for some reason, but determination won out and I got it done. You guys getting a weekly video from me is important enough that I can push through trouble focusing. And then it was storming while I was recording the script, so I had to time my recording between thunderclaps. Please, the best way you can support me in what I do is by subscribing, liking, and commenting. I reply to every single comment I get, so you can always have discourse with me. If you want to see more videos, maybe another sort of spooky one, check out this video on the Nutballs, which I did for Halloween last year. Or click here for, you know what? Let's let YouTube randomly recommend something. I'm curious. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.